Welcome to today's edition of the IntoTexas AI podcast. It's your look at AI news and trends impacting Texas. I'm your host, Shannon Belew. Let's get started. Every week it seems like Texas adds another piece to its AI economy. A new data center or university program, a new investment announcement. It all adds up to the promise that artificial intelligence is going to and is changing how business gets done. Now, there's little doubt that Texas is building the physical infrastructure for AI. The state is also making what I think are real strides to creating a long term pipeline of technical talent to support a healthy AI ecosystem through degree programs and workforce initiatives. And that's the future, and it definitely looks bright. But let's talk about the workforce we have today. People caught in the middle of the AI transformation. Are we supporting the managers who actually have to make all of this work today? Are we building a generation of AI leaders who can lead now and bring us through the transformation? Well, the data tells a different story, and it's not always pretty. For the last few years, middle managers have made up roughly a third of all corporate layoffs, as originally reported by Bloomberg in 2023. And the trend has continued. It's driven by the expectation that organizations need to be flattened, largely due to AI automation, or the perception that AI can eliminate that middle layer of the workforce. It's even been dubbed as the Great Flattening. Gartner predicted that by the end of this year, 2026, we'd see 20% of corporations cut over half of their middle manager roles. Whether or not those numbers pan out, we'll have to wait and see. But I do think we're already realizing there's a bit of a fallacy to this approach, that perhaps instead of being replaceable, middle managers are a critical component to the successful adoption, implementation, and yes, management of an AI enabled organization. We've even seen a recent trend where some organizations who went through cutting those roles have started hiring employees back or hiring for roles that they replaced once with AI. That's called the AI boomerang effect. So there's lots of changes happening, and that's really what we're discussing today. It's not about wiping out a layer of management. Instead, it's the changing role of middle managers and the need to build effective AI leaders that can manage today, right now. Conversation starters. In full transparency, as I was considering topics for today's episode, there were a lot of big AI stories dominating Texas headlines. A lot of the expected stories, data centers, state policies surrounding data centers, and new investments funding data centers. And I appreciate all of those stories, and we will definitely cover them in the coming weeks. But I was really inspired by a few recent conversations that I've had with people that are simply trying to figure out how to adapt with AI and as it's increasingly showing up in their work. Now, at the heart of these conversations, they really centered around that changing role of middle managers, increased workloads and expectations for those roles, and corporate America's continued elimination of those same middle manager jobs. In one of these conversations, a manager of a data team was trying to understand how to discuss and sometimes justify the output of his team's AI generated reports to executive leadership. The problem? Well, the data team didn't have the same permissions and access to the depth of information that the AI model had. So that essentially removed a much needed human in the loop function to check and validate accuracy of those reports while also continuing to help train the model to make it better. Another conversation that I had was with a young leader asked to manage a team of AI agents. It was a great opportunity for him, but the rest of the responsibilities that he had had previously were unchanged, and the workload was proving more than he could manage. To him, his leadership didn't seem to care, or definitely weren't willing to redefine his role to better reflect the current level of work that he was doing. And finally, there was one other conversation that was really interesting. I was talking with a leader of a product team, and her company was making AI adoption a priority and wanted the product teams to start integrating AI into their work pretty soon, right? Immediately, really. And she was fully on board and really excited to start doing that work. But her questions weren't about the technology or, which tool to use or how to AI to the work itself. She was really more concerned about what AI meant for the structure of her team. Would people's roles change? And should some tasks move from employees to AI tools? How should the team divide work between people and technology? And how would she know whether AI was actually improving performance? How should she manage the anxiety and some of the stress that naturally appears as her team members were understanding and learning that AI was becoming such a significant part of their jobs? Well, those are the type of management questions that team leaders should be thinking about and know how to answer. And often they're expected to handle those questions without guidance from executive leaders. The adoption order is moving faster than the management model. In each of these examples, all separate conversations, by the way, the companies where these leaders worked had a mandate to adopt AI, which is great. That's what we want to see. But these were top down driven directives with varying degrees of guidance on how to integrate the AI into the work and how the work would change the roles of the people doing it. And those conversations captured something that I suspect is happening inside a lot of companies and a lot of companies in Texas right now. I wouldn't be surprised, in fact, to hear that many of you have had or are having similar conversations or even experiencing some of these same scenarios. I think the good news is that senior leadership of companies are increasingly moving from a state of experimentation to expectation. Executives want and need AI incorporated into the business, and they want results. They expect to see productivity gains at a minimum. They want faster work and better decision making. And increasingly, they want proof that, well, the investment is producing a return. And I think that's a good sign and the right focus for executive leadership. But what happens when that expectation moves down the organization? Eventually it lands with a product manager or an operations leader, a marketing director, even a plant supervisor who has to answer probably a much harder question. What does using AI actually look like for this team, for my team? That manager is often given the AI tools without being given a new management model. The instruction certainly might be use AI more, but that doesn't always explain which work should change and which remains in the hands of the human. It doesn't explain how to lead a team that may eventually include both people and AI agents completing different parts of the same workflow. Is it a total handoff to an AI model? Where and how much human in the loop is required? And who's accountable when the output is wrong? Or how performance expectations should change when some employees use AI well and others don't? And this is what I think of as the missing middle of AI adoption. We talk a great deal about executive strategy at the top and employee skill sets at the bottom. But managers in the middle are the people expected to translate the strategy into actual work and be accountable for reporting the outcomes. So, is this a Texas workforce issue? Well, this matters everywhere, but it's also particularly important in Texas, especially when you consider the size and structure of our economy. Texas is on track to becoming a center for companies that build AI and build the networking and infrastructure that support the technology. It also has the opportunity to help ensure that AI is integrated across sectors from manufacturing and energy to financial services and healthcare and, well, frankly, all the industries in between that, right? And where we see success at the enterprise level, we should also be sharing those successes and modifying it to fit small and mid sized businesses as well. Again, it's the full ecosystem, and the state really has an opportunity to support across that entire ecosystem. Now, most of the organizations aren't hiring teams of machine learning engineers. They're asking existing leaders to incorporate AI into work that already exist. A very recent national trend, I think, reinforces this. New data from Indeed was recently released and shows that AI is spreading well beyond traditional technology jobs. The number of U.S. job titles explicitly touched by AI has more than tripled since 2022, according to Indeed. And employers are now advertising AI related roles in familiar fields such as sales, human resources, legal services, customer support. I don't think this is a surprise to any of us that have been keeping up with the trends, hearing the news. We know that it's changing, but it is significant how much it has increased. And in other words, what we're really seeing is that the AI economy is not only creating new technical jobs, and this is, I think, the shift that we're really seeing in big numbers now, but it's simultaneously changing the expectations attached to existing roles. And once AI becomes part of an existing job, the manager of that role, of that job, has to understand how the work is changing. Texas universities, I think, are clearly seeing this broader shift that's coming. Texas has more than 20 bachelor's and master's degree programs focused on AI. Reportedly, it's more than any other state in the U.S. That's according to Degree Prospects. The University of Texas at Dallas is teaching agentic AI inside its business analytics programs, including projects that use multiple AI agents to support supply chain decisions. While UT Austin and its Macomb School of Business now offers an online postgraduate program in AI and machine learning that's tailored for business applications. And Texas A&M and their Mays Business School has an AI and business certificate and minor programs as well focused on automated industry workflows. Now, this one is particularly interesting, I think. UT Dallas also offers an AI strategy for business certificate that's built around leadership, ethics, and practical business application rather than coding alone. All of those programs are encouraging, especially the ones that apply business strategy to AI. It shows that Texas learning institutions understand AI cannot remain confined to computer science departments. But a formal education opportunity is only one part of the solution. The manager already leading a team today may not be enrolling in a master's program. She needs guidance right now. And awareness training is not the same as leadership preparation either. Texas government has also taken a meaningful step. Beginning this year, many state and local government employees who use a computer for at least a quarter of their work are now required to complete annual AI awareness training through programs that are certified by the Texas Department of Information Resources. That's a great start. Employees should absolutely understand the risk, the responsibilities, and basic principles surrounding AI use. But awareness is not the same as management capability. A manager can certainly understand that AI creates privacy issues, bias, accuracy risk, but still have no idea how to redesign a team workflow or a team's entire structure or guide a team member's expectation as his role changes. A leader can certainly complete a course on responsible AI and still be unprepared to decide whether an AI generated recommendation should replace or support or just inform a human decision. The next stage of training has to move beyond awareness and into the mechanics of leading AI enabled work and managing a true AI workforce, agents and humans both. The manager's job is changing. We see that We know it. So, what actually changes for those managers? Well, at a minimum, I think that there are four major points of change that we should consider. First, managers have to become designers of work. For years, that management role, they assigned tasks to people based on the roles. In an AI enabled organization, they will increasingly break work into components and decide which parts belong with a person, which can be assisted by AI agent, and which may be handled largely by that automated system. Now, that's more complicated than just replacing one employee task with a tool. Work rarely arrives, as we know, in neat little pieces. A process requires that we understand the full sequence of work from task origin to task output and measurement, with a lot of points layered in between, including things like research and human judgment, communication, approval, and absolutely accountability as well. Now, AI may be useful for some of those steps, but also may be inappropriate for others. The manager is the one that has to understand the difference. Now, the second point that changes, I think managers have to become stronger judges of output. AI can produce something that looks complete and polished and even appears confident when it's wrong in what it's presenting. That means review cannot be treated as an afterthought. Managers, the human managers in the middle, right? They need to define what good work looks like and what must be verified and what requires ongoing human expertise and what level of error is acceptable or unacceptable. In many ways, AI increases the importance of managerial judgment rather than reducing it. Third, I think that managers have to rethink performance. If one employee uses AI to complete work in half the time, does the company double that person's workload? Does it expect better quality of work? Does it free time for higher value work and strategic thinking? Or does it redesign the role? Well, there is no universal answer, but there is a bad answer, I believe. Simply adding AI to the existing workload and then expecting employees to do more without changing priorities or processes or incentives, that's not the right move, in my opinion. Now, speaking of incentives, rethinking performance also means possibly shifting how managers evaluate and compensate their team members as those role expectations shift with the successful use of AI. You may see a team member creating lots of activity with AI, but that doesn't necessarily result in value for the team or the department or the business as a whole. So a manager is the one that has to decide and, of course, agree with executive leadership who gets rewarded. What gets rewarded, activity or outcomes? And she should also create a system that doesn't penalize learning along the way. Now, for the fourth point of change for managers, and maybe the most difficult change, I think that managers have to be ready to lead through uncertainty. And in all honesty, good leaders should know how to do this, but not all managers have mastered this soft skill and this leadership skill in the way that's needed in, again, such a fast changing dynamic environment that we're seeing now with AI. And, it's just particularly difficult when you have this technology that's causing these rapid shifts and uncertainties. Employees, they're not imagining the pressure. AI is definitely changing job descriptions and hiring patterns and overall expectations. Some workers are excited and others are worried, and sometimes it's a mix of both. So, a good manager can't promise that nothing is going to change, but the manager should be able to explain what the company is trying to accomplish and how decisions will be made, what skills will matter, and where employees have room to help shape the new way of working. That kind of candor builds trust. All right, let's take a look at an example from the area of Texas manufacturing. So, we are seeing nods of recognition to this shift across all different sectors. But I thought it was interesting at a Manufacturing Institute event in Dallas earlier this year. business and workforce leaders focused on the combination of talent, technology, and training. Texas has nearly 1 million manufacturing workers, and the sector represents a substantial share of the state economy. So the message from industry leaders was pretty straightforward. Advanced technology only creates an advantage when the workforce has the skills to put it to work. And that's certainly true on the factory floor. And it's just as true inside a product team or a finance department or a marketing organization. AI adoption is not a technology project with a little training attached. It is a redesign of work, and managers are the people who make redesign real. So, what should companies do now? Well, for all companies, including those in Texas, I think the practical response is not to wait for the perfect AI leadership curriculum to appear. Start with the work and the people right now. Start with those managers closest to that work and ask questions. Ask them where AI expectations are arriving faster than the guidance they're receiving. Ask which roles and workflows are becoming unclear, and ask where employees are already using AI, including the unofficial use that probably is not going to appear in a formal adoption report, by the way. But as leaders and company owners, help those managers map the work of those roles across their teams. Help them define human accountability and establish review standards. Help them decide what success should be measured against so they have clear expectations and can communicate those expectations across their team. Give them to raise concerns as well, and without anyone being labeled resistant to innovation. Most importantly, I think as leaders, you need to involve those middle managers before major decisions are made that are going to impact their team. Managers shouldn't learn about an AI driven workflow redesign after leadership has already announced the expected output or outcomes that they're going to be held accountable for, such as savings. I keep returning to that conversation I had with the product manager in particular. Her executive leadership team was right to prioritize AI adoption in the organization. Companies can't ignore a technology that is in such a huge and significant way changing how work gets done today. But an adoption mandate is not a management plan. Any company, and those companies, especially in Texas, want to continue to be a leader of the AI economy. Well, we have to invest not only in the data centers and the startups or the engineers and university programs, we also have to invest in the people who translate technology into productive, responsible, and trusted work. That means the managers in the middle, because eventually many companies will all have access to very similar AI tools. So the real advantage is going to come from those organizations whose leaders know how to redesign the work, how to protect judgment and support their people and turn those tools into measurable business value. Texas is building the infrastructure for AI. Now we need to build the leaders who can make it work. That's all for today's episode of IntoTexas AI. As always, I appreciate you joining and listening and watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and always drop us a comment. Let us know what you're thinking and what you're seeing. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, I'm your host, Shannon Belew. We'll see you then.